Representative Ballinger, thanks for joining us. Why is your bill necessary? What specific threats to religious freedom can you cite? Because a lot of people say bills like yours are simply a reaction to the growing legalization of same-sex marriage across the country.
Yeah, and we've heard that over and over again, and I really believe it's a bit of a mischaracterization. You look at it, and Bill Clinton signed the original RFRA that was carried by Chuck Schumer, of all people, voted on by all of Congress. You know, one of the first state RFRAs was Illinois, was voted on by President Barack Obama, who at that time was State Senator Barack Obama. And I think that you look at it, the RFRAs have got kind of a bad name. They've been lumped in with something that it's a debate that really the RFRA should have never been included in.
By Representative, just to be clear, there's a half century of federal precedent saying businesses can't discriminate against people for a wide range of reasons: gender, race, religion. Here's the question: should gay and lesbian citizens of the United States receive that same protection?
I think that that's something that should be debated. And what I've said over and over again is that's a different piece of legislation. There's no protections provided either on the federal law or actually in the state that gives those additional protections. And frankly, that wasn't the idea of my bill. What my bill was focused on was to allow somebody to believe what they want to believe, carry out that belief, and not have the state interfere with it unless there's a real good reason to do so. And so my focus was to affect the religious side, the person be able to believe what they want to believe. And so if somebody else wants to provide that additional protection, that would require a separate piece of legislation altogether. And that was actually introduced, but was never actually brought forth and debated on the floor. So I really feel like it's kind of it's misplaced anger, I think.
Let me get Jeffrey involved. What do you make of the representative's arguments?
Well, again, like Mike Pence, he's not answering the question, which is these laws exist for one purpose, which is to allow religious people not to serve commercial relationships with same-sex weddings. Isn't it true that this bill will allow religiously sincere people not to participate, not to serve as florists, as photographers for same-sex weddings? Isn't that what this law does?
No, this law doesn't, because as it is right now, there's no protected class, so an individual can discriminate against anybody for any reason as long as it's not one of those protected classes, either on federal law or state law. And so my bill actually has no effect on that at all. There's no discrimination. In fact, the only discrimination that this bill would affect is people who would discriminate against a person who holds certain beliefs. And so that's really where this bill is effective, and it actually has nothing to do with any other type of discrimination.
Well, but I mean, I've read the bill. The bill allows people to say that they are religiously opposed to same-sex marriages, so they will not, so they don't have to participate. They don't have to sell their services to them.
You'll have to give me the section where it says that. Now, if you're talking about the fact that we're on a strict scrutiny standard, you know, that we're going to a heightened scrutiny just like 31 other states are on, just like the federal government already is on, well, true, that's there, but frankly, that's the same as it is in every one of those other states. In fact, we're a minority of the states right now that doesn't give that heightened protection for religion. So I really think that, and as it is right now, it won't change anything because there is no protected class given to the LGBT community. And frankly, if that's something that needs to be done, then we ought to be debating it, and somebody ought to bring that bill. But frankly, from my standpoint, what I wanted to do was protect somebody's religion.
Representative Ballinger, when you see what's happening in Indiana right now, the backlash from all sorts of quarters of the American economy, are you worried the same thing could happen to folks in Arkansas as a result of this bill, which Governor Asa Hutchinson apparently says he's going to sign into law?
You know, right now there's a whole lot of energy, a lot of people who are upset, and they would really like to see some of these things changed, and I understand that, and frankly, I'm even embrace individuals actually getting involved in their government. I think there's not enough of it. What I would say is that what will happen when the dust settles is they'll realize that 31 other states already have a strict scrutiny standard. This law is substantially similar to the one signed by Bill Clinton, voted on by our president. The one that you know that has been in place in a lot of other states, and actually there's never been, you know, the sky hasn't fallen in those other places. And I think that we'll find eventually that people realize that. I mean, it's kind of hard to boycott more than half the states and do business. I think people primarily are going to be concerned about, you know, is there a market and can they come here, and is the tax climate such that it's beneficial to business? Do we have a trained workforce? Those are the things that people are going to be concerned about.
All right, Representative Ballinger, thanks for joining us.